Welcome to the Jobs and Work podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kendra Jason. I'm a sociologist and workplace equity consultant, and I will bring guests onto the show who reflect the diversity of the American workforce. On this podcast, I challenge you to think about work. Why? Because in America, we spend more time at our jobs than anywhere else. But how often do we really talk about work? And I mean all types of work: women's work, essential work, retirement, being your own boss, how to handle your boss, and so much more. Please subscribe and share the Jobs and Work with Work for Change podcast. You can learn more about my consultancy that supports this podcast at work4changellc.com. Hello, and welcome to the Jobs and Work with Work for Change podcast. Today we have small business owner Taylor McElwain. Welcome to the podcast, Taylor.
Thank you, Kendra. I'm so excited and happy to be here.
Awesome. So on episode 41, I invited Taylor because, number one, Taylor took my Starting Your Own Business workshop. So of course I'm going to support her small business. But when I met her, I was so fascinated by the work that she does and what got her led her to me. So I wanted her to have some more time to talk those things out for me to learn more about her. So let me start out with just her quick bio so that everybody knows who she is, and then we can get into this wonderful conversation that I know we'll have today. So Taylor is passionate about social change. She's from Indianapolis, Indiana, and her work really focuses on marginalized populations and social change. So Taylor earned her bachelor's degree in sociology from Franklin College, where she did have the opportunity to mentor first-generation college students, co-teach liberal arts seminars, and begin her work as a public speaker. Following that, Taylor went to pursue her master's degree in education from Baldwin Wallace University. And then while attending Baldwin Wallace University, she founded a mentor group for resident assistants of color and founded the university's first on-campus food pantry. So Taylor also acclimated well to the area by serving youth facing food insecurity in the greater Cleveland area. Currently, Taylor is pursuing her Ph.D. in sociology at Virginia Tech. So Taylor's business, all right, she is the founder of Digital Scholarship, a consultancy that serves a safe digital space for diversity workshops. She also leads a podcast called the Prayer Wall Podcast, which is really intersects spirituality and sociology, which is absolutely fascinating. For those of you who watch my show, which is many of you are sociologists or really think about things sociologically, we know that is a really interesting intersection, spirituality and sociology. So I want to talk about that more as well. But before we get into the podcast, let's talk about digital scholarship. So, tell our viewers, our listeners, what digital scholarship is and basically what led you to start that consultancy.
Right, absolutely. So Digital Scholarship serves as a digital platform with the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion training, workshops. I do a ton of speaker series, things of that sort. Okay. And so the thing that led me to this is that I was contacted about a year and a half ago now by a global tech company, and they were seeking diversity services. And I was like, okay, I've done, a little one-off workshop here, a little one-off workshop there, but never had an entire client, served as a contractor, anything of that sort.
Yes.
And so I began doing that work. And then I would pick up more clients just by networking and things of that sort. And so I was like, why not turn this into a business, while I'm working on my PhD and things of that sort. And so, I am having such a great time in my studies that I'm wanting to use my business as a platform to share access to sociological concepts as well.
All right. So, wow. And so how has your business grown in that year? Like, what are the different things that you do?
Mm-hmm.
like what are people asking you for, and how do they seek you out?
Right. So these businesses are coming to me and they're saying, we understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion should be essential to our core. It should be essential
Yes.
to who we are as a business. And we
Right.
don't want to just come off as performative, right? We want to be true to our mission. So I work with these companies to develop based on their previously established mission, values, and statements. Around 3 to 4 diversity initiatives. So that can range from, building a substantial infrastructure for diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we see that representation on every single level, even the
Right.
exec level.
Right.
That can be community support and outreach. If I'm working with global corporations, making sure that the way that we use diversity is multifaceted, and that we have, global partners who can understand that, these are social issues. And although we may not use the word DEI,
Right.
we still have these same challenges and issues to work through. And so it just kind of depends on what the core of that business is.
Yes.
And the people that they're serving. So with this being a tech company, it was really great for me to learn how to, transform my skills to a digital space to market to more companies.
Yeah. So say more about the digital space part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the digital space the fact that you do it virtually, or is it digital because the client services are digital? So explain what the digital component is.
Yeah, so all of my services are digital. And so that can range from me doing it in person, speaking engagement or workshop series, to something that I have that is a module.
Yeah.
Something that's pre-made, and I am able to send that. So those are going to be our more basic diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So like the foundations, the fundamentals, what is DEI in the workplace, things of those sorts. And then with that, I actually have the podcast, Prayer Wall Podcast as well. And so that is another platform for me to speak about these things. And then coming this July, I will also be starting a second podcast from that, that won't so much focus on the spirituality piece, but will focus more on granting access, so sociological concepts, to people of color who cannot access literature, who don't understand the literature, and things of that sort. So I am serving as, a cultural broker, I like to say, to just talk to our people about things that affect us.
Awesome. And so, one thing that you said that I can really relate to is now I was more intentional about starting my business. Like I started Work for Change as a consultancy first, and then through word of mouth, I got my first client. Right. For you, it was kind of like the opposite. Someone reached out to you because you had a particular skill set. And then after you get so many of those requests, and this happens to a lot of people, after you get so many requests, you're like, wait a minute, I need to really think about how I can not just monetize, because of course, you're getting paid for your service, but how can I structure this in a way that makes more sense for me, right? So I'm not reinventing the wheel each time. But one thing that I heard you say in your conversation just now was, about global clients and building global partnerships. And it's been less than a year. And so the reason why I really smiled at that, because I had a similar experience where when I started Work for Change, I was literally focused just on, I was like, this is Work for Change. We're available to nonprofits, educational institutions, for-profit, whatever, whoever you are, we're available for you. And I really just was open. And by my third contract, I had a global client. Literally. Right. And so it just blew my mind that within 3 months of starting the business, I was already like managing a global contract, and you wouldn't have been able to tell me that.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about, like, what is your, what's the best way to say it? Like, when clients reach out to you, potential clients reach out to you, and you get these new unexpected opportunities, how do you take those on? Like, what is your thought process, and what has been your experience in you sort of, the clients that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, Kendra, I think back to my very first speaking engagement. I was an undergrad, a freshman, and I spoke at our end of the year diversity celebration, and the terror, right? and the anxiety. But I had a mentor, Black woman there, Terry Roberts, who served as the director of our Office of Diversity there.
Yeah.
And she pushed me to do it.
Right.
And thankfully, she saw the potential in me before I even saw it.
Oh, yeah.
But I've been primed for this, right? So I look back and I'm like, wow, God was preparing me this time, this time, this time. And it is like you get that global partner and you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm really doing this.
Yeah.
And so that has been essential for sure. But when I get a new client, there's that automatic excitement. But then I'm like, am I qualified for this?
Yes.
So my very first client, I was like, okay, this seems like a lot. Am I qualified for this? But I worked through it.
Yes.
I took additional certifications to gain more knowledge and insight.
Right.
And so it's just pure joy. It's pure excitement. I love doing this.
Yes.
I actually had the opportunity to go travel to one of my clients, and the conversation and we call them roundtable presentations were still virtual, but I was in the office, like in a Zoom room.
Okay.
And that was like the coolest experience ever for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just great. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So, so Work for Change was similar in that Work for Change was established during COVID-19, right? Of course. And so when I initially did my business plan, and I'm really saying this story for those people out there who are thinking about starting your business or just curious about how this process works, because it's really number one, it's a black box. And then number two, you just kind of figure it out along the way anyway. But we started, virtually. I thought, I literally, in my business plan, it was a digital platform. I had no intention of breaking out into the real world. And then over time, we did most of we did all of our engagements online, and that went well, and that was great. And then we had a client in Indiana who said, we want you here. We've been in person, so we need you in person.
Right.
And, I was fine with all my vaccinations and COVID protocols, and they were too. And so it's like we broke out of the virtual space.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, like I didn't even foresee this evolution.
Right.
Of my business. And the thing is that your business often evolves, not necessarily from your thought process, but based on your client needs.
Yes.
And I love how Taylor, you just said, like, all of us go through this when you get a new client, no matter what their need, you're kind of like, okay, I can do this. Can I do this? How do I do this? Right. And the thing is that you're fully prepared to do it. Right. And we talk about this in the Starting Your Own Business workshop, all of the psychological things that barriers you have to work through, that you're totally competent in whatever your business venture is, and you just figure it out. And you and the client may figure it out together. That's what consultancy is. It's a partnership, right? It's a partnership. You guide them through the process. You give them some tools and language and modules and structure, and you guide them through the process and things, you do together, because with consultancy, everything is customized.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right. It's customized based on the client's needs. And so I just really want to encourage people who are, unsure about, can I do this? How do I do this? How do I figure this out? It is an evolution. Right. And if you kind of just stay engaged and stay committed, it'll work out. Right. Absolutely. So one thing, your bio is heavily laid in community service. Yes. It's heavily laid in giving back. It's heavily laid in outreach. And so, talk to me a little bit about how and why that's a part of who you are, and how that translates into your consultancy and into your podcast.
Yeah. So as a sociologist, I'm sure a lot of other sociologists can agree with this. A lot of times I feel like I need to do something, right?
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking. And so, yeah, one way that I cope with that is by, giving back and making sure that I am in spaces where I know that I'm making a difference, where I can see that I'm visibly making a difference.
Yes.
And so I identify as a servant leader. I love, love, love just being out in the community and just bettering, the places that we come from.
Right.
And, just working in the communities that we come from and giving back and mentoring the youth. And when they see me, they're like, oh, wow, like this is possible. Like that representation matters.
Yes.
And so a lot of my work is with youth as well. And just, I'm really interested in sociology of education. And so that pairs well with that as well. And so I say all that to say, it works out.
Yes.
You stop trying so hard to focus on balancing and more so focus on alignment, right?
Yes.
So what feels like it's going to serve you while also serving others at the time as well.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do a whole podcast on balance versus alignment. Right? We talked about this, right?
Absolutely.
Balance is nearly impossible. Just go for what align. And what that means in short, at least to me, and Taylor, you can do your own definition. It just means doing things that are in line with who you are and the contribution you want to make in the world and your value system, right? It doesn't mean that you throw your personal life to the wind or your, whatever else you got going on, because you do have to figure out how to prioritize and how to negotiate that space. But anything you do, you want it to be in alignment with who you are and your value system. You don't want to be pulled too far away. And again, I think I really was attracted to Taylor being on this podcast because I saw so much of myself, in her as we talked about things, because I'm the same way with sociology. I love sociology. I love being an academic. I love the intellectual discourse, but I got to a point in my career where I was really questioning myself and the everyday contributions that I was making in the world to everyday folks. And those of you who know me well and know me better know that my expertise, my interest is in everyday workers, low wage workers in particular, Black and brown workers and their experiences. And a lot doesn't happen when you write in a journal, right? There are things that we can do more on the ground, more community-based, more direct, that may not have like those long-term impacts that we go for in the journals with policy review, but it does make a difference in the individual's life, in the community's life, and that can have long-term effect or does have long-term effects. You're so right, Taylor, when you say representation is so important, because to get out there in community and show people that you are a Black woman sociologist, a Black woman PhD, a Black woman business owner, a Black woman successful, stable person, whatever that thing is, like you're representing something that we don't see a lot. So for those of you who don't know, Black women make up less than 1% of PhDs. Less than 1% of PhDs are Black women. So I'm not just saying, that representation matters in a way like, you see, more Black doctors or more Black, lawyers or what have you. When it comes to PhDs, those numbers are even more slim. All right. So tell me a little bit more about how you use your podcast. Like, why did you start your podcast platform? And then how did your current podcast evolve into the next podcast that you will start soon?
Absolutely. So my podcast, Prayer Wall Podcast, was born out of COVID-19 pandemic. And just me, I knew for a while that I wanted to do a podcast.
Yes. But
it literally took this natural, I don't even know if it's natural, this crisis, this global crisis.
Phenomena.
I don't even know what to call it. For me to sit down and actually do it. Right. Yes. And it was a blessing in disguise because I was home. I was working on my master's, but it wasn't so time consuming, that I couldn't do anything else. And so I really used that time to become disciplined, to learn about the art of podcasting, because I was starting from nothing. I knew nothing about podcasting. So I went on YouTube University. I call YouTube University. You can learn YouTube University. Yep. And just started from there. And I knew that I wanted to talk about my faith, but I also wanted to talk about my experiences as a Black woman with faith. And so on the podcast, I talk about a lot of different things, having therapy and Jesus, for instance, or purity culture and what that means, like for Black women in our bodies and things of that sort. So yeah, and I had a lot of great feedback, loved doing the podcast. And then I started my PhD, and I'm starting to do all of this foundational research, about sociology of education, and really recognizing the disparities between educational access, resources, opportunities, and all those things between our Black kids and our white kids in the classroom. And so that really, it just bothered me. And it really brought back a lot of memories of how traumatic the education system was for me as a little Black girl, and things of that sort. And so my new podcast, which will be called Fine Printed, will just be a way for me to share with our people, things like the history of plantation schools, and the way that those things have carried on into the way that we do schooling in Black America. So, yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. So, what's so interesting about what you just said, Taylor, is that for so many marginalized folks, Black and brown folks, poor folks, you don't even realize how traumatic and harmful your primary education was until you either become a parent yourself or you have some type of reflection, and it kind of hits you like, oh my God, when Miss Jones said this to me, or she, or when Mr. Allen put me in the corner of the room and made an example, and you realize how things, because you have the lenses to understand how things are racist, right, or sexist, or whatever the thing is, and it reproduced, and how it created a foundational memory for you and those things. That's really deep. So I look forward to checking out your prayer wall podcast now, but also Fine Print which will come up really soon. So let me ask you this. Again, I'm just so fascinated by your story. So I'll just step back for a second. So Taylor, I was introduced to Taylor, like I said, because she took my Starting Your Own Business workshop. The next Starting Your Own Business workshop will be June 18th and 25th. It's a 2-part workshop. And like Taylor and I were discussing, the first part, we really, really worked through those psychological challenges that you have, those barriers that you have, those personal challenges that you have that really get in the way of you figuring out and walking the path that you need to walk, and figuring out who you are in your business. And then in the second part, the next week, we really work on your business plan and get those core components of your business plan. And so what I loved about Taylor, as you saw here or heard here, is that Taylor already had her business started. Right? She already had digital scholarship, right? You can learn more about digital scholarship. All Taylor's handles are below her social media handles, so that you can follow as well. But Taylor just needed some fine tuning and some visionary work done, and some concreteness to some of the ideas that she had, and some planning. And so we were able to do some of that over the 2 weeks. And so I really encourage those of you who are interested in starting your business, or like Taylor, who already has a business, and really just kind of, you kind of started it by the seat of your pants. That's how a lot of businesses start.
That's how it works.
But there are so many resources and so many supports and so many mentors and networks out there for you. And so please look into that. The information is below for the Starting Your Own Business workshop as well. But I wanted to ask you, Taylor, for anyone who's listening, or watching this podcast, and they're really intrigued by your story, and they kind of relate to it. I have a little idea. People have been asking me to do things on the side, or calling things their side hustle, and things of that nature. Like, what advice do you have for anyone who is, already doing this work, or want to figure out how to build more structure to their work, but they're just a little intimidated for whatever reason?
Yeah, I would say that you feeling overwhelmed is completely normal. It's completely valid.
Yeah.
But it is going to take discipline. And one thing that I encourage people to do is to commit to doing one thing for your business a day, right?
Yeah, good advice.
And you get to a point where it's like, okay, I can do 2 or 3 things a day for my business. And then, you have a full-time business and you're like, wow, how did I get there?
Yeah.
So just taking it piece by piece, literally, to get through it. If you don't know the answer, YouTube knows the answer, Google knows the answer. Like, we have so many resources at our fingertips.
We do.
And find mentors, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm so thankful that I was able to take the Work for Change workshop, because like now I have a great mentor in Kendra, and I'm super excited, and to just be able to expand and just talk about business ideas and all those things. So yeah, just commit to discipline and one thing a day starting out.
That is excellent advice. And I'll just second that, one thing a day. My approach wasn't one thing a day. It was the same thing. What I would do is 1 hour a day. And so I would actually, so let's just say my normal wake up time is 8 a.m. That's the time I wake up and I start getting my kid ready for school. I would wake up at 7 a.m. And in that 45 minutes or an hour, I would just work on my business.
Right.
My business plan, my business ideas, all of those things. And then when 8 o'clock hit, I put it away and I started the rest of my day. And just by doing that consistently, every day, at least Monday through Friday, I was able to build what you all have seen Work for Change turn into. And I was prepared for things because I had laid that groundwork, because my head was always in it by doing that one thing a day or that 1 hour a day. So when I did get the call from the client, it wasn't like, oh, let me get my bearings for something I was thinking about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah. So is there anything else you would like to say, Taylor? Like you want to. Okay, good. Great. I thought you were trying to get in for a second. I wanted to offer you that chance. Thank you so much, Taylor, for this time to get to know you a little bit better, and for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. Your story to me is so inspiring. It's so inspiring because it actually is so common. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's so common. And I think what you're showing, at least what I see, is that you're showing people what common experiences can turn into.
Yes.
If you're thoughtful about them, if you plan around them, you can build a structure that has such an impact way beyond your person, your family, into the community, and like Taylor, even globally. Yeah. Just if you put a thought process behind it and get your support system. All right. So thank you so much again, Taylor. So as always, please, Work for Change is on all the social media platforms. You can look down at our Linktree platform, which has all of our social media handles on it. So go to each of those and please like, subscribe, and share so that we can work to make the world of work better. Have a great day, everyone.